It started as just another day. The kind where you wake up, go through the motions, and think you've got it all figured out. But life has a way of reminding you how unpredictable it can be. I was sitting at my kitchen table sipping coffee when the phone rang. It was my dad. "Your mum's been rushed to the hospital," he said, his voice shaking. "It's bad. Really bad." My heart dropped. I couldn't breathe. My mother, the woman who had always been the rock of our family, the one who made everything feel okay, was suddenly on the edge of life and death. The next few days were a blur. I dropped everything to get to the hospital, driving through the night, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. What if I didn't get there in time? What if I never got to hear her voice again? The weight of the unknown was crushing. When I arrived at the hospital, my dad was sitting in the waiting room, his face pale, his hands trembling. He didn't have to say anything. I could see the fear in his eyes. And that's when it hit me. If I fell apart, if I let myself sink into despair, who would be strong for her? But how could I be strong? I was terrified. I didn't know if I could handle losing her. I didn't know if I could carry the burden of her illness. The doctors had no answers. They couldn't say whether she'd pull through or not. And as the hours turned into days, I found myself battling something worse than fear: doubt. I started questioning myself. Was I really capable of being strong? Or was I just pretending to be? Every time I thought I was getting a handle on my emotions, something would trigger a wave of panic. The thought of her lying unconscious, her life hanging in the balance, was unbearable. Then came the twist I never saw coming. One evening, as I sat by her bed, I found myself talking to her as though she were awake. "Mom, I'm here. We're all here. You've always been the one to show us how to be strong. I need you to fight. I can't do this without you." Suddenly, the machine beside her beeped erratically. My heart stopped for a moment. The nurses rushed in. I stood frozen, not knowing what was happening. In that instant, I realized something. My mother's fight was more than just about survival. It was about choice. And in that moment, she was choosing to keep fighting, even when it seemed hopeless. The doctors stabilized her, but the shock of what I'd just witnessed lingered. I felt like I was drowning in uncertainty. What if this was the end? What if I was already losing her and didn't even know it? I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria later that night, feeling completely alone, when a nurse sat down next to me. She'd been there through it all. Calm, compassionate, unwavering. "You're doing great," she said softly, "but you're also holding yourself to an impossible standard. No one expects you to be perfect. You're here. That's enough." Her words hit me like a tidal wave. I had been trying so hard to hold it all together, to be this pillar of strength for everyone else, that I had forgotten to show myself some compassion. I was running on empty, and yet I was trying to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. The days that followed were some of the toughest of my life. Mom was still critical, and we were still waiting, unsure of how things would unfold. But with every passing moment, I began to learn a crucial lesson. True courage doesn't come from being fearless. It comes from being willing to face the fear and uncertainty head on. There were moments when I broke down in the quiet of the night, when I questioned whether I could handle this journey. But each time I did, I remembered something. The strength I was searching for didn't come from some grand act. It came from the small decisions, the choice to show up, to fight, to hope, even when everything seemed impossible. And just when I thought I had learned everything about courage, the ultimate surprise came. One morning, several weeks after that terrifying night, my mum opened her eyes. I couldn't believe it. She smiled weakly as if nothing had happened and whispered, "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." It was a miracle. The doctors had no explanation. They called it a turnaround, but for me it felt like something far more powerful, something only faith, hope, and courage could explain. But the real shock wasn't just her recovery. It was what I had discovered about myself. In the midst of the darkest storm of my life, I had found a strength I never knew existed. Not the kind that comes from power or invincibility, but the kind that comes from vulnerability. The courage to let myself feel fear, to acknowledge my doubts, and to keep going anyway. It wasn't the absence of fear that had allowed me to stand strong. It was my willingness to act in spite of it. As I walked out of the hospital with my mom holding her hand, I understood that courage isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice we make every single day. And in those moments of crisis when everything seems uncertain, it's the small acts of courage that shape us into the people we need to become. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about showing up even when the odds seem insurmountable. It's about choosing to move forward, despite the doubts, the fears, and the pain.
It started like a quiet storm, a whisper in the night. One moment I had everything, then nothing felt alright. A trembling voice, a distant call, turned my whole world upside down. And suddenly the ground beneath was nowhere to be found. But I won't let the fear define me, though the road is dark and long and long. Every tear's a step behind me. I will find where I belong. I will rise again. I will stand up tall. Even when my strength is fading, I will risk the fall. Through the doubt, through the pain, through the fire and the rain, I will rise again. I will rise again. I saw the weight within his eyes, the hands that shook with fear. But in that moment I just knew that I had to be here. I whispered soft, you showed me how to fight when hope was thin. And though my heart was breaking, I found the fight within. I won't let the fear define me, though the road is dark and long and long. Every tear's a step behind me. I will find where I belong. I will rise again. I will stand up tall. Even when my strength is fading, I will risk the fall. Through the doubt, through the pain, through the fire and the rain, I will rise again. I will rise again. Oh, courage isn't being fearless, it's standing through the storm, holding on when everything is breaking, finding strength in being torn. I'm stronger than my weakness, I am more than my scars. Every battle makes me braver, every wound becomes a star. I will rise again. I will not back down. Though the night is cold and heavy, I will stand my ground. Through the doubt, through pain, through the fire and the rain, I will rise again. I will rise again. When I walk into the sunlight with the past behind my skin, I will whisper to the silence, I have found my strength within.